This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation.
But this is the first time in my professional career that everybody, 100% of us, are consciously aware we are engaged in the change initiative.
Yeah, everything. I mean, COVID caused us all to go through change, right? At the same time, but our experiences were so different.
Facing these unprecedented times in isolation is pure insanity.
We are finally here with Dolores. Please say your last name so I don't mess it up.
Priegnitz, Dolores Priegnitz.
Dolores Priegnitz, thank you. We're finally here with Dolores. We introduced her to the Leadership Beyond community back in the summer, and then life and business happened, and we wanted to get together for a conversation, and now here we are in fall, and we are together for the conversation. So we're thankful, Dolores, for you making the time to talk with us and with our community. This is going to be a great conversation, and what we'd like to do is when we talked in July, we were talking about how the last year and a half has kind of pushed HR professionals and leaders to really highlight some of the challenges that probably a lot of us saw sort of bubbling up, right? But the pandemic really just thrusted us into this notion of we need to take care of each other. And what is the calling as HR professionals and as organizational leaders for us to do that for ourselves, for our businesses, for our employees, and for our communities? And we teased everyone about a framework that you've built called Local. And we'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Oh, sure. My honor. Thank you so much, Adrienne and Tom, for inviting me. I'm very pleased and honored to be with you. And yes, I'd like to talk to you about HR Local. And what I meant by that, as we went through the pandemic, and because we had to really buckle down and our world became a lot smaller, right? As a result of not being able to travel, not being able to see each other face to face and attend meetings. So what I learned in that process, and even before then, because some of the work that I did before was all global and remotely done prior to the pandemic, that was just kind of the way we worked. And so when I looked at HR and looking at it, at keeping it local, I was looking at what does HR have to do, especially in this huge churn, right? This significant change that just kind of changed HR. And when I looked at local, is you need to start to listen with the people that are around you, right? You need to look at how can they help you, HR. We're always, at least my experience has been, we have a tendency that we have to have all the answers. And the pandemic taught us that we didn't always have the answers, that we needed to partner with some of the people that we actually supported and other fellow HR associates, whether they were within the organization or outside. So you look at it to listen to them, start locally, and look at how people are reacting, and not just at their words, their verbal, whatever they articulate, but what are some of the things that you see in Zoom meetings, which made it very difficult, right? Because you couldn't really tell. So what is some of the behavior? What are some of the action or inaction that employees were taking? So think about that, think about how you listen to them, how you observe action and inaction, because that tells you a lot of times why people may be, not wanting to participate, or you can't, they may not have all the tools that they need. So we were looking at being local. Start with your organization, whether you're in a regional office, in a sales office, or in corporate HQ, wherever the office may be. And then look at communicating, not only about what's changing, how you're going to help them, what tools or what programs you're going to offer to get them through the transition, right? When you look at change management, is how do we transition from the current to the future? And a lot of the action is within the transitional state. So how do you communicate those things? Is it via email? Is it having a conference call? Is it having a one-on-one? And can you seek out that person that may be quiet and find out why are they being quiet, or the person who's taking over the meeting? You know, how do you do those? I don't want to call them interventions, but how do you do those, talks, those conversations when you're all physically distanced? It's very different when you're in a meeting and you're all walking into the meeting or walking away from a meeting. You can have that kind of informal conversation and ask questions. That's not always possible in a Zoom call or a remote, whatever distance collaboration tool you use. So communicate, find different ways of communicating. I was working on a project and they were, of course, physically distanced from me. And so what I found is if I would give them at least 15 minutes beforehand, which was very early my time zone because they were in a different time zone than I was. But if I just gave them 5-10 minutes, offered them 15, but we usually didn't take that long, just to let them tell me how their day was going or how their morning was starting. And that allowed us to communicate. There were still things that we needed to cover, but it kind of set the stage for how that meeting was going to go or that conversation. So think about ways of communicating, not just, verbally, but other actions you might be able to take. And then from an action and listening, listen to them both, with your ears, with your eyes, the body language. Look at how they are reacting to you. Look at how they're reacting to a program that you may be introducing. In this program, there was going to be a merger and acquisition in this instance. And so there was a lot of angst, as you can well imagine, huge M&A work and uncertainty about what it meant for them. So I felt my job as a consultant and help to the HR team was to just focus on that particular group for that meeting. There's people all over the world, but let's focus on that one particular group and let's take action with them. Or maybe we just listen. I think this is a time where HR becomes, that traditional owl. You observe, right?
Yes.
You wait to see what happens or what doesn't happen after, time, as you were saying, inaction or not taking action. You have people that you believe have signed up, they're enrolled, and you think that they're on board, but then nothing happens. So you need to be that owl, listen to them, listen to the verbal cues, the nonverbal cues, and how do you work together as HR and your business partner and the leadership team? Because leadership was key to some of the changes, at least based on my experience, some of the changes that happened during the pandemic. If leadership needed to be very present, and when it wasn't, there were some bumps along the road because they just felt that they weren't important enough or they were being left out. So that's kind of what I was talking about when I looked about HR local, because I'd always had a global perspective, right, in my work that I did in HR. And the last several months or a year and a half have been very different in terms of looking at HR, look at our people really and listen to them.
Well, I love the acronym and I like the perspective. A couple of things come up that I would like to have you explore a little bit. And I was thinking about the beginning of the conversation when you said HR doesn't have to have all the answers. And that's a very good mindset. But I think that one of the challenges to listening is the fact that your counterparts sometimes think they know what they're asking from you. And it almost seems like a yes/no question, meaning, can you do this or can you do that? They think they know what they're asking for. Right. And there's a lot more diagnosis that needs to happen and a lot better listening. But I'd like you to address the challenge of when the counterpart is trying to hurry through this and they just want your cooperation, but true collaboration requires deeper understanding. So what are some of the challenges you have in getting your partners to even take a step back and include you in what they're actually looking for instead of just asking you if you can do X or Y?
Yes. So great question, Tom. I think what I've learned, and not just during the pandemic, but throughout my HR experience, has been that you help them start with the end in mind. What is it that they're trying to accomplish, right? At the end of this interaction or this project or whatever it is that you're working on, what is the end in mind? What are you trying to accomplish? And then work your way back and have them into manageable activities or manageable conversations so that they understand what it is you're trying to do. You're there to help them. And a lot of times, they have the answers or at least an idea of what it is they want to do and how they want to get there. My role in HR has been, and some of my fellow HR partners have learned, we just need to guide them and show them the whole picture, because they're very vested, right? They're probably measured on delivering whatever project or initiative or program.
That's where the tension comes in.
Exactly. So help them, see that what it is they're trying to accomplish and how can we make it into manageable chunks of work, and how do we get there together, and who else needs to be engaged. Sometimes we forget that these people that are going to be impacted by the change or going to be communicated whatever HR program is being introduced, they're adults. They manage themselves outside of the office, right outside of the building. So they have their own ideas and they may be able to help you. You need to just kind of listen and find out who those evangelists may be, who those change agents or champions for you may be. It may not be the leader, right? It may not be anyone at that level. It may be one of the people that is ready for change or has seen how things could be different. And that's when we need to enroll them and help them and give them the tools so that they help us in HR and the leadership team deliver whatever the objective is and execute to meet that deadline or that project objective.
Yeah, I think the real power of HR professionals or HR consultants, change management consultants, is that we should always be behind the scenes, right? I don't want people knowing my name, the leaders, the advocates, those who are having to do the changing or having to lead the changing. That's who everyone needs to see and know. Exactly. And it reminds me, as you were explaining local, it reminds me of, you mentioned leaders need to show up and lead the way. And with the pandemic, I think that was an added challenge because the leaders may not have wanted to show up and lead the way, right? And yet they were worried about leading for their people, but yet having to really stop and take care of themselves so that they could lead the way. That adage of put your own mask on first, right? I use that a lot. The airline guidance, with the masks, the air masks, put your mask on first, because if you can't address your own emotions and feelings around the change or the situation going on, how will you be able to truly pause and listen and observe, objectively what others are experiencing and help them along?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Great analogy, Adrienne. And I think what we learned, or at least my experience, was the leaders when this first happened and when changes happen, like an M&A or, any kind of project that is major for the organization, new program being rolled out, new standards, new quality metrics, whatever it is, they get so caught up in making sure that they get all of those action items crossed off. They forget to take care of themselves. And I think I saw that a lot during the pandemic, where the leaders had to get people to continue to be productive, continue to, with business. And they didn't take time to pause and put the mask on and take care of themselves. So we had to go back and kind of help them and say, you did all the right things at the time. That's what needed to do. Business continuity, business readiness, meeting your clients and meeting employee safety and all the things that employees needed. Now we need to just pause and take care of you. What is it that you need? Excellent job. Not everything was perfect. Nobody expected it to be, right? And sometimes you have projects like that just get, put on your to-do list. And so, yes, you need to take care of some things right away, but we need to make sure that the sponsors or leadership or whoever is managing that project has what they need, the tools, whether they're talking points or just someone to, emote, someone to brainstorm with, to give them that possibility or opportunity to be themselves and take care of them, so that then they're stronger leaders and better partners for you in HR as well.
And you mentioned leading by example. You and your people showing up that way gives permission for all the team members to recognize they have the old downhill goes the blank.
Right.
And they have the same experience. We all had to meet these challenges, but survival isn't a good long-term strategy. Yes, we need to survive, but we better have some thrival in there or it's not sustainable. And leading by example is good. Being willing to be vulnerable and say, I need a little space here.
And for some leaders, it was easier than others, especially those that had been in very prominent positions or, influential positions within the organization. So they had always appeared very strong, kind of knew everything that was going on in the business. And then changes happened, whether it was, the pandemic, M&A, other projects that were being launched simultaneously, and workforce wasn't quite ready. So we needed to help them. And I think that's where HR can be a valuable consultant and partner to the team and everyone, just by being that, a set of eyes and ears and a body that can help them get through that transition or get through whatever challenges they may be facing. But yeah, they need to thrive. We need to get them through the thriving beyond survival mode. You're right, Tom.
So I'm looking at our list. So I just want to kind of summarize the acronym to distinct words so that we can remember it, right? So it's the first L is listen.
Listen.
Right? Listen.
Observe.
Listen to your employees and to everyone. You start with yourself, I guess, right? Listen to yourself.
And make sure
everyone.
you're ready.
Right. Observe. Is the O. Observe the behaviors, the pain points, and as you said, was harder to do, still is harder to do over video conferencing when we're not physically in person, right? It's easier to mask the things that, we set our virtual backgrounds and so the craziness behind us is invisible to others. We, put our lipstick on and we look okay. Or there's chaos in the background. I lived that.
I can relate.
The C is to communicate.
Communicate, yes. Communicate. All levels, right? Up and down, across the organization, and within your team. We need to communicate, right? Whether it's verbal, whether it's written communication and email. With this group and other groups that I've worked with, they've had a Friday afternoon where they would just get together, no business, just what were they going to do for the weekend, or what was the day like? It was more a social process, and people were not, they didn't have to attend, but surprisingly, most of the group in that team attended, whether they were going to go, out on the lake, or they were going to go hiking, or they were going to do chores, or some of them had to work over the weekend. It was just communicating to keep those lines of communication open. Yes.
We got to pause with that one for just a second, because Adrienne told me a story just yesterday or the other day that reminded me of how many times I have to say, just because you hit send doesn't mean you communicated. And she's involved in the change initiative, and they said to her, oh, we already told them. And if we take the whole acronym into account, did we really listen to their responses? Did we observe their responses? What they meant is they announced.
Yes.
And so, yes, that's where you start. You announce, whether it's a new how many days in the office you're going to be in, or a COVID policy, or whatever it is, you do have to announce. But communication is more than announcing. And we live in an age where we think, if I get the information from Tom to Dolores and Adrienne, I'm done with my communication.
Yes.
And that's the beginning. That's the first volley.
That's the first step in the process,
He
actually.
has to be aware, so I have to announce it, and then I'm not done.
Yes, yes. And then to continue, the A is take action. You know, where they're, like you said, you send out an email, you had a meeting, and then there's no follow-up. So you need to take action. You need to understand that when you communicate something, you build an expectation, right? There's an expectation something's going to happen, or you're going to do something else, or I'm expected to do ABC. But if you don't follow up and you don't take action, then your communication may go nowhere, just in the inbox, and that's it, right? Filed somewhere in your electronic
Or in the outbox.
folder. Hopefully not. And then lead by example. You know, regardless of your place or position within the organization, we can all be leaders in different ways. And we sometimes in HR need to use those people to help us lead. Because while you say, yeah, I told someone, HR told us, or, you know, so-and-so told us, that doesn't mean that they're going to, you know, lead. That just means that they told you something. So have those designated leaders and those informal leaders, right? The ones that know everything that's going on, talk to everybody. You need to make sure you leverage those individuals as well.
Yeah, I think that is, in the change management work I do, that is the one most important thing to measure the success of an adoption, is to get those leaders, the right leaders, informal. As you said, it might not be the one that's at the top of the org chart. It might be somebody in the middle. It might be somebody on the floor, right? But who is the influential person in that group of people who are having to change? That's who you want, right? That's who you want right next to you as you're figuring out how to work through the change, because that's who people will listen to.
Exactly.
And too many times there's the mistake right there.
Yeah, just simply because of their title or personality or whatever it may be. Sorry, Tom, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, you didn't interrupt me at all. I just said influencers and connectors.
Yes.
You get something through an organization if you find the connectors.
Yes, and those are the people that seem to know everyone and know what's going on, and will help you. Will build that bridge if there's any resistance or lack of openness. They can help you kind of open that doorway to get into those individuals that may be on the fence, right? That are not quite sure what it is you're trying to do. What are you going to do to me? And they help them see the with them, you know, they help them see why this change is good or what some of the downfalls may be, but they help you communicate what you're trying to achieve.
So of the 5 key actions, is there any one which you've observed to be the most challenging for people?
They're all integral, you know, important, right? I think communication is the toughest that I've seen, and especially in today's world.
Our culture really doesn't support, it supports pushing out information.
Exactly. And right now, my experience has been there isn't a lot of room or time for that to and fro, right? That to and fro conversation, because we have an hour meeting and I have to do it in an hour and I'm taking notes and you told me I need to do this. And then we move on to the next, whatever it is, their daily work or another meeting. So I think communication is what my experience has been. Communication is still a challenge in spite of all the tools we have today, right? And everybody pretty much being very well versed in all of these distance collaboration tools. It's still a challenge for many of us.
And you can no longer, it's harder to have the meeting after the meeting, right? It's on the way out of the conference room.
Yeah, so much
where
happened
you wrap
then.
things up, you reiterate, right? That can't happen. You click leave, poof, God, you're to the next one. And I think we've missed a lot of that.
Yes.
And that's a lot of the intricate threading of people throughout an organization that really is what creates that productivity and that efficiency. And we just severed all of those, didn't we?
Yes, we sure
Yeah.
did. And I think,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. It's going to the meeting, walking to the conference room, meeting in the hallway or in the break room. We've eliminated the social process
Yeah.
of our work. We have to fabricate it so it's not as spontaneous, right?
Which takes more energy and more thought and more acting deliberately, to your point,
Yes.
right? To the A.
Mhm. Yes, because you have to act, you have to plan it. Where before it was informal. How many times did I walk out of a meeting where nothing was asked in the question, but we walked out of the meeting and then people were asking questions. I'm like, why didn't you ask it when we were in the meeting, right? But at least we had the opportunity to converse about it and make notes. And then the next time, bring it up. Is this still an issue? Are there still questions about ABC? Right now, we don't have the social process. We're very good in the technical right now, I believe, but the social process is gone.
Yeah, it's almost like we need to learn new techniques in the virtual space, right? Like even you had mentioned opening up a meeting, even though it's a meeting and there's an agenda, opening up with the first few minutes of just asking the informal questions. How was your day? What are you doing this weekend? Those are so important. And for some of us, we're not wired for that. We're not wired for the chit chat. We feel like that's a total waste of time. Like, let's get to the agenda. We've got 100 things we got to get through and we have 60 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But it's so important. So for those of us who are wired to just like get in and start ticking off the tasks, we have to really be intentional about giving that pause to create some of that community, in this virtual space we're in.
And not, I happen to be wired for that, but it feels contrived if it becomes another agenda item. In other words, in the beginning, we're going to just ask how we are and check in. It almost feels like being put on the spot for a agenda item. So we do have a lot of adjusting to do here.
Right. Yeah. And for some of the people, as you mentioned, Adrienne, that aren't, they don't want to communicate. They just want to go to the meeting. They want to do what's on the objective list and move on to their next project.
Yeah, camera off, and I'll speak when it's my.
Yeah, and
Yep.
when you call on them, it's painful for them. You can see it, with this group that we were doing, kind of that informal meeting, just to have fun and try to find out what people were doing and connect them with corporate office as well. It was painful for them. They didn't like it, and you could just see it. But yet it made it difficult for them. But I think we sacrificed them to kind of create some community for the rest of the folks. Some people really like doing that, So how do you hit that balance? How do you do that? I'm not quite sure if anybody has the answers to that or how they've learned how to do it. I'd be really interested in
Well,
hearing.
I think we have one piece, which is we stay in communication with one another. That's what a leadership beyond, and that's part of our vision, and talk about what's working and what's not, but just ask those questions. They don't have simple answers, but hybrid work is here to stay, and we are going to get better at it. That's just the reality we're facing, and it's not smooth.
No. Maybe we'll have little avatars that we can hide on behind. We can have our little avatars act out how we truly feel.
There you go. So I'm going to put you on the spot now. First of all, thank you very much for investing your time and expertise with the community. And I'm going to put you on the spot, and you can take a second to think about it and breathe before you answer. But I would like to leave the audience with an optimistic idea of what I'm hearing, and I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but this is what I'm hearing, is that this really is an opportunity for human resources leaders to be a greater voice in the overall leadership picture, which is something that I've been hearing they wanted for years. So I'm hearing an opportunity for that. And we identified some of the challenges, and you gave us a wonderful framework for how to get better at it. So leave the audience with some sort of idea of reimagining HR for better world and a better work.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yes, I think HR has always struggled in being that business partner, right? And they are wanting to be at the table, and we're called to be at the table, and will continue to be given the new way that we work in this virtual world today. And so I think what people need to, in HR, need to think about is, how do you help your leaders and your other fellow HR business partners or colleagues? How do you help them achieve that vision of a more interactive, more involved, and really kind of the expert on people, right? On people for your organization, for your business. How do you create that environment so that they come to you, not just about HR related, but business related, future related, strategic planning, visioning? Well, how do you create that? And I think you help your partners by seeing that HR has a vision of becoming more involved, of understanding the business, the objectives, the numbers, the forecasting, the strategy. Be involved in those conversations, right? And don't be afraid of the complexity of the business. Communicate with people in a variety of ways. And again, take action. Be in the forefront. Be, forthcoming about what your strengths and your weaknesses may be around the business and understanding it. But your willingness to learn, your willingness to take that extra step, because you're right. HR has always wanted to be at the table. And I think this last 18 months or so has allowed HR to be at the table from the very beginning and designing the new way that we work and designing how we manage our staffs and how we communicate with our teams.
Well, you came full circle, and you inspired me beyond belief, because one of the reasons we don't come to, remember early on you said we don't have to be an expert in everything, we don't have to know everything. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that keeps us from coming to the table is, in our area, we truly are the expert. Mm-hmm. And when we step into a new type of business conversation, we've got to use the listening and understanding, and our expertise will help there. But our operational expertise, if we lead with that, we're going to be cut off that conversation from the start. So that's a little scary and exciting. And I think you have the right attitude and mindset and really heart set to say, we can support you. We don't know how, but it starts with us learning, listening, and then contributing as makes sense when we get down to the action part, but not coming in as business experts beyond what we are.
You're right, exactly. And a lot of us
vulnerability.
Exactly, being vulnerable. But being that ace, being the one that you're willing to achieve, you're willing to celebrate successes, and you're willing to empower people. If I'm not good at something, but one of my teammates is, I'm going to engage them. Why not? Because if I empower them, our HR team is going to be stronger. It's not going to be threatening to me, and I may learn in the process, so that the next time I don't have to always rely on someone, but I learn something new. So I think we can together in HR redefine how we look at HR and how we support the people that we work with, whether it's your fellow teammates or customers or employees, but how we support one another and how we learn moving forward.
Love it.
Well, what a great way to close. So I just want to throw out, so the final reminder of that for everyone, right? Local, listen, observe, communicate, act, and lead.
Yes.
And I'll add, and it starts with you yourself before others.
Self-leadership is the true foundation of good leadership.
Absolutely. You're both correct. Thank you.
Dolores, thank you so much for your time today. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. My pleasure. It was an honor to work with you or share some of my information and some of the things that I've done and what I believe is an opportunity for HR moving forward. I wish you both the best. And it's been my pleasure getting to meet you on this journey.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.